Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolutely epic history of the FIFA World Cup. We're going to uncover how this localized game, originally just played on muddy fields, somehow evolved to conquer the globe and become the most watched sporting event in human history.
Now, to really get the soul of this tournament, we've got to look at the vision of just one man, Jules Rimet. Rimet firmly believed that football could be this incredibly unifying, peaceful force in a rapidly changing world. In an era marked by rising nationalism and conflict, he envisioned a truly cosmopolitan game. The idea was that the violence of warfare could actually be transformed into peaceful jousting on a completely level playing field.
So, modern football's roots, they're squarely in the British Isles. The very first official international match took place way back in 1872 between Scotland and England. But by 1904, the game had expanded so rapidly that European nations gathered in Paris to form FIFA. And by 1908, the sport was already an official event at the Summer Olympics. The sport's footprint was expanding at breakneck speed, really driven by things like the telegraph, steamships, and a world that was rapidly connecting.
But there was a major collision course brewing here, which brings us to the core conflict of the 1920s. See, the Olympic Games, which hosted the football tournaments at the time, strictly adhered to amateur rules. That meant countries couldn't actually send their best senior players if those players were paid to play. Well, FIFA realized that football's massive popularity required the inclusion of professional athletes, so they decided to break away. They had the money, they had the political status, and they wanted a true independent world championship.
Part 1, 1930, the first World Cup and the 10-day voyage.
Think about trying to launch a global tournament during the Great Depression. It was an absolute logistical nightmare. In fact, only 13 teams participated in the inaugural cup in Uruguay, which was chosen to host because it was celebrating its centennial of independence. Convincing European teams to travel to South America meant enduring a grueling 10-day boat ride across the Atlantic Ocean. Plus, players were terrified of losing their day jobs back home. Ultimately, Jules Rimet had to personally persuade just 4 European nations, Belgium, France, Romania, and Yugoslavia, to make that massive journey and join the South and North American squads.
But despite all those hurdles, that 1930 tournament was packed with spectacular firsts. A Frenchman named Lucien Laurent scored the very first World Cup goal. Then, just days later, the USA's Bert Patenaude netted the first ever hat-trick. And the climax of the whole shebang was a dramatic final where the hosts Uruguay defeated Argentina 4-2. They did it in front of a staggering 93,000 fans in Montevideo, cementing themselves as the first ever World Cup champions.
Part 2. Surviving War and Upset.
Right as this new tournament was gaining real momentum, it hit a terrifying roadblock. In 1939, World War II broke out, and the planned 1942 and 1946 tournaments were completely canceled. During this incredibly dark period, FIFA struggled just to keep the lights on. They had absolutely zero financial or personal resources to plan a peacetime tournament. It was a huge cliffhanger for the sport. There was a very real possibility that the World Cup might never actually return.
Against all odds, though, the sport survived. It was resurrected in 1950 in Brazil, and the decisive final match drew an estimated and absolutely deafening crowd of 200,000 people to the Maracanã Stadium. In a legendary event now known as the Maracanazo, Uruguay dramatically shocked the heavily favored Brazilian hosts 2-1. To this day, that remains the absolute record for the highest attendance at any sporting match in human history.
Part 3. The Television Revolution.
Moving into the post-war era, a brand new piece of technology came along and literally transformed the sport's trajectory. The 1954 World Cup in Switzerland marked the birth of modern sports broadcasting. Audiences huddled around these primitive, flickering black and white screens and experienced something completely magical. The sudden death tension, the raw visual drama of knockout football, it was just perfectly suited for television. It created this shared cultural experience that radio simply couldn't match.
Just 4 years later, by 1958 in Sweden, TV allowed for the first truly global broadcast. And man, what a tournament to broadcast. The world actually got to watch a 17-year-old prodigy named Pelé announce himself on the global stage, scoring twice in the final. They watched France's Just Fontaine score an incredible 13 goals, a record that still stands today, by the way. And, for the first and only time, all 4 British teams qualified. The World Cup wasn't just a sports competition anymore, it was appointment viewing for the entire world.
Part 4. The Curse of the Trophy.
Now, woven right into the fabric of the World Cup is this wild true crime mystery regarding its ultimate prize.
The original award, the Jules Rimet Trophy, was cast in gold-plated sterling silver and mounted on lapis lazuli. It depicted Nike, the ancient Greek goddess of victory. It was the most coveted prize in football, for sure, but it quickly became a wandering, heavily targeted relic. Seriously, the timeline of this trophy reads straight like a Hollywood heist movie. During World War II, an Italian official actually hid it in a shoebox under his bed just to keep it away from the Nazis. Then, in 1966, it was stolen in England, only to be miraculously sniffed out under a garden hedge by a heroic dog named Pickles. You literally can't make this stuff up. But sadly, after Brazil won it permanently in 1970, it was stolen again in Rio de Janeiro in 1983. There was no heroic dog this time. The original trophy was never recovered and is widely believed to have been melted down.
So, to replace the stolen relic, FIFA introduced the trophy we know today, a stunning 18-karat gold sculpture of two human figures lifting planet Earth. It's this brilliant symbol of unity. Today, it is so heavily guarded that touching it is a rare privilege strictly reserved for tournament winners and heads of state.
Part 5. Conquering the Globe.
All right, as we enter the late 20th century, the tournament fully transitions into an unparalleled media juggernaut. Back in 1970, live satellite broadcasts pushed viewership to an estimated 600 million for the final in Mexico. Fast forward to 1994 and you see football finally conquering the lucrative American market. That final between Brazil and Italy, it drew an astonishing 2.5 billion viewers across 188 countries.
And it wasn't just TV screens. That 1994 U.S. tournament also hit a breathtaking physical milestone. 3.59 million spectators attended the matches in person. That's an all-time attendance record that stood completely unbroken for 32 years.
Then, by the 2006 World Cup in Germany, things just get astronomical. Cumulative viewership across all matches hit 26.29 billion. The final alone was watched by over 715 million people. To put that into perspective, that is nearly 1/9 of the entire global population tuning in to watch a single game of football at the exact same time. It utterly dwarfs every other event on Earth.
Now, as you might guess, this massive commercialization completely revolutionized the economics of the sport. Broadcasting rights are the primary engine funding the tournament today, which drove FIFA's revenue to a staggering $6.1 billion in 2018. All that wealth allows for incredible prize pools, nearing $871 million for the expanded 48-team tournament in 2026. And the broadcasting landscape is shifting yet again. We're moving away from traditional TV, and the new frontier is happening on fragmented digital platforms like TikTok and YouTube to capture a whole new generation of fans.
It truly makes you step back and reflect. How did a humble 13-team tournament, one that required a grueling 10-day boat trip for European teams to even participate, evolve into a cultural phenomenon watched by billions? It survived boycotts, global economic depressions, world wars, and even the literal theft of its own trophy. Yet it became Jules Rimet's ultimate dream, a symbol of global unity where all nations meet as equals on the pitch.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. With the media landscape fracturing and broadcasting moving from communal, exclusive TV networks to highly personalized digital platforms, how will the next generation experience the magic of the World Cup? Will that shared, sudden death tension feel exactly the same on a smartphone as it did on those flickering screens in 1954? It's an incredible evolution to watch unfold. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.